Hey, welcome to the Chronicle YouTube channel. I'm Busta Brown, and I am sitting here with the beautiful, legendary Mütter Evans, a legend in radio. And let me go to 1979. Okay. First of all, how are you?
I'm good.
Good.
It's a beautiful,
you look
beautiful
good.
day. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you look good.
Flattery will get you almost.
Almost anyway. Yeah. And I like how you're rocking the earrings. You look good.
Oh, thank you much.
You're coordinated. So let's go back to 1979.
Okay.
I was a sophomore in high school. First day I show up to school. I was walking through the parking lot and I heard teachers and students blasting KSOL. That was our big station in San Francisco. Mm-hmm. And on the radio was One Nation Under a Groove by Parliament Funkadelic.
Remember it?
One Nation Under a Groove. Yes. Right? I'm like, whoa! And so I never forget hearing Marvin Robinson. He was one of our popular DJs.
I know Marvin.
You know Marvin?
Marvin.
Yeah.
Marvin.
Marvin is a bad dude. He used to always say, sounds so nice, gotta do it twice. Bam, hit the song again. I will never forget saying, one day that'll be me on that radio. That will be me on that radio. And then during that same year, 1979, there was a 26-year-old African-American female. While I'm dreaming about being on the radio, she's making history. Second woman, African-American woman in broadcast history to own a radio station. And she's on the air making waves. Her name was Mütter Evans. That's huge. I'm dreaming about just being on the radio. You're 26-year-old making history. What was on your mind? Because that's not the thinking of the average 26. But I never met a Mütter Evans.
Well, what was on my mind?
Yeah.
It was an opportunity, Buster. I did not plan it. You know, life is a series of things that unfold.
Right.
And if you script everything, you miss out on lots of opportunities. And for me, I guess it actually started, I started working at the station in '74 while I was still a student at Wake Forest University. And my initial plan was to go into TV. The curriculum was set up so that I did the radio first.
Right.
Then did the TV because I believed then, and I still believe, television persons who have done radio do it lots more effectively.
Is that right?
Okay. Oh, yes. They're better communicators. They speak better because it's not all about how they look. It really is about the ability to communicate and to capture an audience. Right. So for me, that was what was most important, to be able to do that and then to put it together and do the eye contact and, you know, all of that. And I did an internship my senior year. Yeah. It was called then 414. And I spent a full month working for what is now WGHP. It was WGHP then, in High Point. Right. I worked with 3 different reporters. I covered 3 different beats: Winston-Salem, Greensboro, and High Point. 3 white males. I actually did some voice work. I'd go back to campus, which was Wake Forest University, and I'm going to the post office or to the pit, the cafeteria, and people stopping me and saying, "Didn't I see you on TV last night?" And I'm shocked. Yeah. I'm being naive.
This is new. This is a new world for you.
Yeah. Well, because I did not see it. I never thought about how doing the work could impact me personally. And having grown up in rural eastern North Carolina, a small town, I was accustomed to space. I was accustomed to being able to do what I wanted to do, but at the same time having my space. And so...
Your privacy.
Yes, privacy, absolutely. I did it when I needed to be known, but at the same time I could still, you know, it was about family and friends, select whatever. And when they said this to me, that's when it first hit me. And I'm going, I'm not even the main person. So that means that there's traction here. But nonetheless, I consciously decided as a result of that to do radio, not TV. Because as much as I had wanted to be in television, I was not ready to give up completely my privacy. I wanted to be able to go to a game or go into a store and they have freedom to shop and do
go
whatever
pick out your own fruit
whatever.
You want to pick without being bothered.
Yeah,
right.
yeah, you know, bothered. Yes, that's exactly right. But at any rate, so when I fast forward, when I started radio,
right,
which I had also worked at AAA while I was still a student, and when I had the opportunity to work there full time, after I turned down the full time job, that then the general manager of WGHP, Mr. Eugene Bohai, had said to Fred Blackman, who was the news director,
the legendary Fred Blackman,
that I worked under for the last 2 weeks of my internship.
Okay.
And they had extended me the offer for the job to continue working the balance of my last semester in school.
Right.
And I was guaranteed a position.
Well, what an opportunity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I was guaranteed a full-time position once I graduated. So I had to think about it. But that was what impacted me most from the decision to go into radio and to deviate from what I had initially wanted to do.
So what impacted you most was you felt like the invasion of your privacy that would have come with TV.
It came with it. And so I was looking at the whole thing. You know, I want to do this. I want to be in communications. I want to write. I want to impact lives. But I don't want to do that totally at the expense of having to give up mine. Little did I know that what I did was going to make me give it up anyway. But I didn't have that. I didn't have that foresight. I didn't have that foresight. I had no crystal ball to say what will happen here. So I actually ended up doing radio. And the owner then, who was Robert B. Brown, white Bob Brown, not High Points
Bob Brown, not Oprah and Dr. Angelo's partner.
Well, and I've known Bob since the very beginning back then too, but not that. But absolutely. Yeah. When I took on the position and moved up the ladder very, very quickly and was promoted to general manager and executive vice president, it was contingent upon because I hesitated. So
you were on the air, it started at 74. At what year did you become general manager?
In 70, I became executive vice president and GM in 78.
So you're what age at this time? Well,
I'll tell you. Let me think. No, that's all right. I mean, it's all there. You can go back and do the math, but you can make me do in reverse.
You're in your 20s, early 20s.
In 1978.
You're 25.
I was 25. But Bob said to me, as I hesitated, because now we work together enough that he knows I was different in a lot of ways.
Right.
And one of those was that he just couldn't throw out a few bills and say, do this. I debated things, and so he said, I tell you what, if and when I decide to sell the station, I will give you first rights of refusal. And I looked at him and went, what does that mean? Because I never heard that expression.
I mean, you're 25 years old. That's a whole nother level.
Well, actually, at this, that's right. I'm 25.
That's a whole nother level,
Well, actually, by then, I am 26. No, I was 25. Because it took months to work it through and lots of other stuff. But so I contemplated and I said, well, after taking a weekend to think about it, I thought, what do I have to lose?
Right.
Which is what I tell all young folks. Do not be afraid to dare to do something differently. That safety net, you know, I knew if I failed, I'd pick myself back up. I knew that my parents, bless their hearts, that they were there and whatever, that I could pick up on a call.
All the greatest took chances.
All of that. So I said, okay, you know, so I did do it. And went through all of what was necessary. So fast forward to when it finally happened, I hadn't really thought about who else was already there doing that.
You hadn't thought about the significance of what was going on.
I hadn't thought about the significance. The fact that I did not know other blacks who were doing it did not mean that they did not exist. There were black men. I did not know that there were no black women. And so my application was approved 2 days after the application of Dorothy Brinson, who bought WEBB in Baltimore, Maryland.
Now, you were doing some heavy things in your 20s. That, I mean, that people hit 50 and 60 and go, yay, I finally made it. You were like...
Yeah.
Wow.
But the thing,
were you ever thinking at the time, this is moving too fast?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
When Bob told me that he was going to sell the
Yeah.
station, I said, no, you can't sell it yet because I'm not ready.
Right.
You know, I knew then that was going too fast. It was something that I certainly wanted to give some thought to and entertain further down the road, but not yet.
Right.
Not at 26
Mm-hmm.
by the time that this, 25 and 26. And I said, no, not yet. And he said to me that opportunity, not necessarily when we're ready, but you have to avail yourself to it. If
That's a
you
good
take
word.
advantage of it. And so that's what I did.
Yeah.
And so after thinking about it, I was going, okay. Still not knowing all of
Right.
what would be involved in knocking on doors and being denied even the opportunity to talk about what I wanted to do,
Mm-hmm.
because the people sitting on the other side of the table were white men. They knew that I was the first.
Did that intimidate you?
No.
No, not at all.
No.
At 26?
No.
Wow.
No.
Wow.
It did not intimidate me. They had control over the financial purse strings, but I wasn't intimidated.
Why not? Anybody else would have been. Why not?
That's just the stuff I was made of. I wasn't afraid. I wasn't afraid not to make it. I was self-assured in terms of who I am and what I could do and
Right.
would do if given the opportunity.
That is so good.
And if the barrier was, and I heard, you're too young. I didn't have a husband, so there was no cosigner.
You're black.
Yeah, I was black. I was woman.
Yeah.
I tell people the only thing that was not a part of the discussion was my religious preference. That was never an issue. Everything else was on the table.
Was on the table.
Whether it was spoken out loud,
Right.
or just subtly implied.
Right.
And those things I had a problem with, and so I challenged that.
Wow.
How dare you tell me what I can't do? The fact that you couldn't or didn't or won't, that mean that I can't.
The book has got to come. That's another topic.
It's a work in progress.
It's got to come.
It's a work in progress.
Because young sisters today, no, women period, young women, 18 to 34-year-olds, need to know your story.
The only two people who could have told me that I couldn't do something would have been my mom and dad.
And they did.
And they did. my mother was, mother was, oh baby, do you realize how much debt you're getting in? I said, Mom, you can't get blood from a turnip.
So when you signed that paper, you're now 26 years old, owner of a radio station, also a personality. Did you once think, how am I going to do this? I can't do this.
Well, everything is bit by bit. That's how we get messed up. We want to skip the steps and go to the end.
Right.
And it wasn't about going to the end. It was about doing the things that I knew to do. It was about going to work every day.
That you knew to do.
That's right.
That's good.
And
that's good.
Having an open mind to learn what I didn't know.
And you was not afraid of failure.
No.
That's the biggest thing.
Activities.
We all need.
Yeah. I'm not a failure.
Yeah.
The fact that I may fail at something doesn't make me a failure.
A failure. Oh, wow.
So it doesn't matter as much in terms of what other people perceive. That was my perception of myself.
Though you may fail at something doesn't make you a failure.
Doesn't make me a failure.
So it doesn't make you afraid of failure.
Oh, no.
Wow.
No.
That is so good.
Even when you fail, you learn.
Right.
If you're smart. Because people who fail, and all of the great ones have.
Right.
But what do? They go back and they revisit the things that they did or that they did not do to improve the next time around. See, that's what you have not to be afraid of.
Right.
You can't be afraid to learn and to revisit it, because the same thing is also true. If you luck up and you're an automatic success, if you don't know how you got there, that failure is still going to be looming over your head. Because if you don't know how to recreate the success, there is going to be some rock down the road, a corner that you don't see, that's going to be waiting for you. So,
and you were talking about we were talking about great ones. A lot of great ones came under Mütter Evans and AAA, which was still is one of the biggest, most legendary stations ever in the Triad area. You're also, along with that, is the word, I guess, synonymous with that. So
the station was 29 years old at the time I acquired it.
And so you greatness came up. There's some living today, some not. Who are some that are today came under Mütter Evans?
Later, but in those early years, Fred was still working for me. So Fred stayed on. He didn't have to stay when I got there. But we'd had a good working relationship when I first started at the station
a lot about you.
In 1974.
Yeah.
I'm proud of the fact that we're still friends. That we still stay in touch. And that's about respecting the craft and all. But there was Fred, there was a fellow young man by the name of Rue Rose, who was a program director. There was Benny J. Later, he was known as BJ's. You know how you all do. You kind of change. You kind of change your names as you move from market to market. Mark Raymond was a good person. Jay Jackson, who I referred to. When I first got the station for a little while, Elaine Gray, who was a local personality and was as good as they come. Elaine got out of the radio business, a few years, later. But then Tina Carson Wilkes, who when she left AAA Radio has been with the Winston-Salem Transit Authority since then. But the things that they learned there helped and propelled them to continue working on. Dee Cherie, Lord bless her soul, Dee worked for me, who was at the program at WNAA and was the program director there. Renee Vaughn, who started with
me. Renee, what's up, girl?
Started with me. I think it was Federal. Went to a major market. Came back. But that relationship is still there.
It's still there.
It's still there. And
AC Stone.
AC. And we were friends, and I miss him. AC Stone.
We all miss AC. Good guy.
But for me, he was Alvin.
Right.
And if he were alive, because he's told this story many times and not just one-on-one. And he tried to shame me once at a function. And he forgot that I was going to get the mic back after he had done so. And he told the story. He says, this woman right here, I wanted to go to work for her and she wouldn't hire me. I said, you didn't tell the rest of the story. You weren't ready then. When you were ready, I couldn't hire you. You didn't want to come back home.
Okay.
So it wasn't until until later. So,
wow.
But I consider myself blessed, Buster, all kidding aside. Because the people who worked with me, and I've got to say State Alexander. State was my first news director, who is now assistant to the president at Livingston College, has been at Johnson C. Smith. He was great. He and Benny Jones were actually the hosts of my first BJ, were the hosts of my first the talk show, the Talk About Town.
Here's something a lot of people don't know. I didn't know. Sir Walter Mack.
Sir Walter
Bishop Sir Walter Mack worked under you. Was he good?
Oh, absolutely. He was a student at Elon when he first worked at AAA.
Was he as good as a personality as he is as a teacher of the Word of God?
Oh gosh. And see, then you really want me to make comparison. Let me put it this way. First of all, he was dedicated.
Yeah.
He was dependable.
Yes.
He came from Elon and he was on the air at 6 o'clock every Sunday morning.
Wow.
That's a real commitment from a young man.
Yeah.
Okay. He was prepared, so he had a good rapport because we had some live shows that were on. So he hosted those. He was with it, and then and then he picked, he chose to pick up the music.
Wow.
So he did that, and so when I think about him, how he honed his craft and continued to improve it, where he has gone does not surprise me. And lots of times afterwards, I'd stop through and then he'd hang around for another 30 minutes, 45 an hour.
Right.
And then we would just sit and talk about life and things and different. So I too am proud of that's a part of his beginnings.
Mm-hmm. Something that a lot of people don't know, a lot of people do know, but why you started the King Breakfast. And it's still going on to this day, and people still support it.
The noon hour.
Yeah.
The noon hour commemoration.
Right.
Yeah, not the breakfast. Yes. Which this past January, last month.
And at that time when you were involved, it hadn't become
wasn't a holiday.
A holiday yet.
Yeah, I started it 5 years before the holiday.
Wow, that's serious.
Went into place, and part of that was there again about being a station that was involved.
Right.
We aired Dr. Martin Luther King Speaks every Sunday morning.
Right.
At 9:30.
Right.
So people listen. The marches were going on year after year around his birthday in D.C. to have a holiday declared.
Right.
That was initiated by Congressman Conyers and Stevie Wonder's song "Happy Birthday."
Happy birthday to Hotter Than July CD.
That's right.
That was a bad CD.
You
use the power of radio to make a difference in our community, and that is powerful. You've done so much, Mütter. What, out of everything you've accomplished in your life, what are the main two things that you look back and say, these are the things I'm most proud of?
Well, they're interconnected. Certainly what we were able to do with AAA Radio under my leadership is still unparalleled. I'm proud of that.
Gotcha.
Regardless of who comes or what the future may hold, what we were able to do with with a 1,000-watt AM station and the lives that we impacted, it's still being talked about, not just with what they heard, but that providing a July 4th picnic, the first time that it was ever done in the park, taking 8 years, taking hundreds of people to Myrtle Beach for a day to make that an activity for families and to make it affordable. Those were the extra stuff. The fact that we hosted the very first Red Cross blood bank in East Winston. I'm proud of that. The fact that I understood the importance of registering people to vote, and that I reached out to others and found out what I had to do to be appointed a special register. And so we registered people to vote at AAA Radio. It wasn't about going to other places. People came to the station because they felt comfortable coming there. I remember a gentleman who was in his 70s. He never voted. But he felt good enough about coming to the station to, what I got to do, Miss Evans, to register and to vote. So all of that was what it was. I took seriously what the FCC said at the time that it commissioned back in 1933, that radio stations were to serve in the interests of the community in which they were licensed.
Absolutely.
You know, that was, I took that seriously. I took that seriously before I became the owner. I took that seriously as the news director, as a person who did public affairs programming before I got there.
When you walked in that door, that was a part of what you were going to be to our community and that radio station.
That was the responsibility, and it only, I only built on it more the more opportunity that I had. And of course, the second thing really is the starting of the MLK Noon Hour commemoration that's been there for 38 years. As I said just last month, because I continue to ask, why do you do this? When we were doing all those other things, it dawned on me, why are we waiting for Congress to approve something that we all agree that needs to be done?
Right.
See, there is more than one way to skin a cat. So if you wait for permission, things will never get done. Okay.
Exactly.
Sometimes you, in fact, have to be the agitator.
Right.
I was young. I wasn't from here.
Right.
I did not know. It never even crossed my mind. If it's not being done, you're part of the problem or you're part of the solution. So I did not go to Peter, Paul, and Mary and say, may I do this?
You got it done.
I just did it.
You got it done.
So I take a great deal of pride in that alone. I take pride in it because for 38 years, the participants, the people recognized, have really been Winston-Salem's who's who. And that just became another way to involve them and for people to meet them and to see them and to appreciate them through the Dr. Martin Luther King Dare to Make a Difference Award, for example, that we've given to almost 100 people over probably the last 25 years or so. So all of that.
Yeah, you've been so much to so many people.
Well, so all of that.
Good.
It ain't over. You know, I'm
no, it's not over because we waiting on that book.
Well,
We're waiting on that book. Mütter Evans, thank you so much.
Thank you, Busta Brown.
I appreciate you. Yes.
My pleasure.
Yes. Oh no, my pleasure. Look forward to seeing you again.
Absolutely.
Soon. All right.
Right. Promise me.
Yes.
Okay.